95, and I was working down in the cities. What I looked for was a getaway, to get away from the cities. I was then offered a job up here part-time for the Mora Police Department. I liked working up here a lot more, so what I did was I left my job down in the cities and moved up here, and I've been up here ever since.
I'm Brian Smith, and I'm a lifelong resident of Kanabec County. I graduated from Mora Schools and went on to the University of Minnesota Duluth, where I earned a degree in accounting and business administration. I came back and was working in Mora and discovered a passion for law enforcement. I then went back to school and earned a law enforcement degree from the Metropolitan State University and started working for the Kanabec County Sheriff's Office in 1994. I've worked as a jailer, a patrolman, an investigator, a patrol sergeant, and I am currently the chief deputy with the Kanabec County Sheriff's Office. I have 3 wonderful kids that go to the Mora schools, and I am deeply involved in our community. I am the Scoutmaster for Troop 191. I serve on the SAC committee, past chair, and I'm the current chair of the Mora Education Foundation. Started putting a lot of those goals into place. When the economy crashed here a few years back, we had to make some significant cuts to personnel and to somewhat of our services. And I would like to try getting those services back. We recently were able to work into the budget, gaining a drug task force officer, and we signed the joint powers agreement here a couple weeks ago to get back into the East Central Drug Task Force to provide us with better services with our local drug problems. I've also been diligently working towards getting the grant for a school liaison officer to serve both Mora and Ogilvie schools. We've been working on this for a number of years now, and I've been in contact with Senator Klobuchar's office trying to find how to get those funds for our school district here so that we can also work not only on the drug problem but some of our juvenile problems that we have in both of our school systems. I think that was a dire loss when we had to give that up, and I think it's something that I've heard from citizens and school employees alike that is a need in our community.
Is getting away from that division between the law enforcement and the public. I've heard a lot of things that have been negative as I've gone around, and when I was on the police department here in Mora, myself and another officer took it upon ourselves to start the recreation night for the developmentally challenged. And I think that what we need to do is have more programs like that where law enforcement works with people to build a rapport. The kids, they have nothing to go to around here. I think that what we should do is have a program similar to what I did with the developmentally challenged with the youth in the area, and have something where they can interact with law enforcement. I have brought up the school liaison officer issue in my ads, and I work for a department right now where we have a school liaison officer, and you wouldn't believe the respect that law enforcement has in my community, and the kids all look up to the officers. They're not afraid to approach us, and it's just really refreshing to see that. Thank you. What you need, again, is the citizens to assist the officers. People are our eyes and ears out there, and they need to be able to contact law enforcement without being afraid of what's going to happen. I just talked with an individual the other day that said that he called the sheriff's office to report a suspicious vehicle in his neighborhood, and he said that the vehicle left, came back, and it was there again. He called, he said the sheriff's office wasn't there quick enough. He saw the vehicle leaving, so he got in his vehicle, and he started to follow it so that he could obtain a license number so that maybe they could find out what that person was doing there. The deputy showed up, and the individual asked him his name, just to be on a first name basis with him, and the deputy said, "That's not important here." And then he felt, the individual that he was talking to felt that he was the bad guy because they said, "What are you doing following this guy anyway?" That's the wrong attitude to have, and I think that needs to change. I think law enforcement should be a little more open to the public.
I believe that the leadership that this office needs is something that I can bring. And I have always conducted myself with the highest integrity, honesty, and friendliness, that anybody that knows me knows that they can come talk to me. And whether it be people that I supervise or people in the public, I have had many people that have come to the office angry about one thing or another. And even when I cannot give them the answer that they want, they usually leave understanding why that is. And I believe that is an important thing to be able to portray to the public. I also believe that you need a highly professional, well-trained law enforcement agency to give the best service to their community. And I believe we have done a very good job of being able to hire some highly qualified people that have served this community. And unfortunately, that's kind of a double-edged sword, because it also makes them a good commodity. And recently, we have lost a number of highly qualified individuals to other agencies. And this is one of those issues that we need to stabilize. And I believe I can do that through good, solid leadership. And we have already addressed the getting the pay to be equitable to other agencies that are comparable to ours. Well, two things have come up over and over. One of them I was a little surprised at. It is something as simple as traffic problems. I have been to numerous residences that complain about the high speeds on our roadways, the poor driving skills, dangerous maneuvers on the highways, and that is a hard one to say that, yep, we can fix that, because traffic enforcement is something that we do on a regular basis. We also have limited personnel out on the roads at all times. So there's only so many roads that you can cover at any given time. But it is something that we do focus on. The other one is drugs. And that is something that I am well aware of. It's been a constant issue within our community as long as I've been doing this, and probably a lot longer. And we have tried to adapt to the evolution of what drugs are most current. And as I said earlier, we are addressing those now by getting back into the East Central Drug Task Force and focusing on some of our biggest problem areas. Drug trafficking is also done through traffic enforcement. So focusing on some of these problem areas that I've been learning about as I've been campaigning is also, will work back with the Drug Task Force and allow us to address both problems at the same time.
And as you speak with people about Hurricane C, what do you find is their biggest concern, and how do you address that?
I think the biggest concern that I've found out from the public is how they're treated by the sheriff's office when they respond. Part of that, I think, is it's a lot of young deputies. A good department needs a mix of well-established veterans and the rookies. I had the luxury of starting my career in the city of Anoka, where I was trained in by an officer who had 20 years, and they can pull everybody back, these young guys back a little bit, and tell them how they should actually treat the public, that it's, and I brought this up before, that there's words on the back of most squad cars to protect and to serve. Protecting is one thing, serving is the other, and you need to serve the public. And when I worked with the State Fair, a lot of that's public relations. The thing that they told us, all of the officers, regardless of how many years we had on, was when you're out there dealing with the public, pretend that the person you're speaking with is a member of your family, that you treat them as you would a sister or a mother, and keep that in mind. That was good words that they gave to everybody out there. The question about the drugs, and I know this hasn't been brought up yet, but I do some checking on some of these things, and according to the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension statistics, the county last year made 14 drug arrests for the whole year. Now, is that training, or what is it? I find it hard to believe that only 14 individuals had drugs on traffic stops or arrests. I work down in the cities, and all the time somebody will forget they had marijuana in their pocket or something like that.
Okay,
This is
thank
something.
you.
I'm sorry. Some of the biggest problems facing law enforcement, I believe up here, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but you have to develop a rapport with the public. That's all I hear out there when I'm stopping at some of your homes, is the problems that people are having. I think that that's a reflection on the leadership, that if this has been a problem for years, why hasn't it been addressed yet? And I've heard this through the years as the sheriff's office took control of the city. A lot of people tell me that they always liked when the city cops would show up because we knew them all better. With the sheriff's office now, what you have is it's rotating door, and you have new officers all the time going to these calls, and there's no rapport with the public anymore.
I would have to say that this is not true. I know my office, and I know the people that work in my office, and I know how they treat people. And they treat people respectfully, and they treat them like they were their grandmother or grandfather. And I really take offense to those kinds of accusations, because I know it just isn't true. The problems that we face here is resources, and we've heard it over and over again in all of these forums and all the candidates. We have limited resources here, and how do you provide all the services that people want with limited resources? And that is a hard thing to do. But I believe with my educational background and my vast experience and my lifelong residency in this community, I will be able to solve those problems. When we can stabilize our personnel here, and which I know that I can do that, whether it be through local recruitment, we will still require and demand a high level of service from our officers. And to get that top quality, we will continue to recruit the best possible candidates for the deputy positions. And when we can close the gap in those those wages that we are able to pay those deputies, that open door policy is gonna slow down quite a bit, and it already has done so. We're about halfway there, and we should be able to do that.
Okay,
yes.
thank you, Brian. Next question.
Well, my qualifications. Like I said earlier, I have 2 bachelor's degrees, one in business administration and accounting, and one in law enforcement. I have worked my way up through the ranks at any promotional opportunity that was available, and I have worked in all aspects of this office. I know this office inside and out, and I know the people in this community. And because I grew up here, I've lived here. My kids go to school here. I go to activities here. I'm active in our community. There are a dozen other organizations that I'm active in within this community, and I believe I do have a pulse on this community, and with my educational background and the experience that I have gained working the number of different positions that I've had in the sheriff's office, including the last 3 years as chief deputy, I believe I can give that leadership that this office needs to provide the highest level of service to the citizens of this county.
Okay.
Other than being a 30-year officer, I've also been in charge of a Fortune 500 company's security force. That was the Hertz Corporation. I did that for 5 years. In that time, they only hired police officers because they were losing 30 cars a month, and that they were self-insured. So you can imagine how much money that was. So they decided to spend the money and go with police officers only. I ran that force for 5 years, and I had to work with the Metropolitan Airports Commission down at the airport as they did all the remodeling down there. That's it.
Okay.
My approach to law enforcement?
Correct.
Well, my approach to law enforcement, first of all, is to have an open door policy. I know that one of the things that I've heard from the public is that they try to get answers when they call the sheriff's office, and a lot of times their calls aren't returned or nobody gets back to them. I feel that that's very important to listen to the public and hear what their concerns are so that we can address those problems.
I believe my approach to law enforcement is just the way I live my life, and I have always treated people respectfully. I've always treated them as I would want to be treated, and I've always done my job that way. And when I've showed up at a call, I've always tried to provide whatever answer I could that was available to me to help solve their problem, whether it be a criminal nature or maybe it was a civil nature and a dispute between 2 parties for whatever reason. And sometimes there is not a way to give a decent, solid answer. It's kind of a no-win situation sometimes. But I have always taken the time to talk people through whatever differences they may have and try and resolve a solution that is amenable to both parties. Sometimes this is just a matter of finding resources that I know about and that I can point them to. Sometimes that's not so easy, but just being able to spend the time with the people to solve their problems is usually enough to give them satisfaction that somebody listened to their wants and their needs. And I've instilled that in all the officers that I have trained. I have worked diligently to hire people that hold those same core personality traits, that they would bring that to our community and serve the people in that same way. Well, that's something I've been doing since I've been chief deputy. We are always looking for ways that we can do things more efficiently and try and get the most bang for the buck out of our dollars. We have, in the last 2 years, we have added mobile data computers into our squad cars, thus giving the officers more information right at their fingertips, thus giving them the efficiency to do more right from their squad cars. We have worked to maximize the coverage that our current patrol force has on the roadways, and adjusted our personnel so that we have the most cars on when we get the most calls for service. And those aren't always the best hours in the world, but that's how we adjust our coverages. Going into the future, I believe that getting the most out of the grant dollars available. I mentioned trying to get a school liaison officer. There's grants for that, and we're trying diligently to get that. The drug task force officer, those were all funds that we were able to work into the budget without increasing our budget. We had a $13,000 increase in our budget over last year, and we were still able to add a drug task force officer.
I will agree with Brian on that as far as the efficiency is trying to get grants so that you can ease the burden a little bit on the taxpayers. As far as and as far as the patrolling, checking to see when the most calls are, what areas they're in, and having as many officers on the street as you can in that time, and even dividing the county up so that there's a patrol area so that the deputies are responsible for that area, and divide it all up so that they can respond a lot quicker than if they just have free reign. I'm not sure if that's how they are now, but I definitely would not want to keep with that. I would divide the area up and have the officers responsible for certain areas.
Okay.
Well, I would, if that did occur, I would like that brought to my attention, because that's not the way we operate. Currently, a call will come in and a deputy will respond, and they are trained to get all of the information: who, what, where, when, how, and that is dictated into a report with as much detail as possible. Once that report is completed, it is sent to a sergeant. One of my sergeants reviews that report, and they determine, did we collect all the information that we could possibly collect? If not, that report is sent back to that officer to complete it properly. And they are instructed why it was deficient. It's a training opportunity. If it is determined that that initial report is complete and it is of a significant crime that it needs attention by an investigator, then the sergeant will then forward that report to an investigator and assign an investigator to further look into that particular crime. I just don't believe that it's happened.
Okay.
Could you read your question again?
I've been the victim of significant crimes. In those matters, the Sheriff's Department has done inadequate investigations. What will you change that will cause deputies to completely investigate with an open mind and get all the facts?
Well, just like Brian said, when the basics of law enforcement is who, what, when, where, how, and why. And that should all be included in a report. If it's not in the report, then it's up to the officer to go back and get everything that's needed for the report to turn it in. And then it should be approved and sent through. I don't have an answer as to why it didn't work.
And then we have, only about 6 minutes, so this will,
That has come to my attention, that somebody's brought up that they're spreading around that I had choked a 13-year-old that's down in the cities, and that's not true. There was an incident that occurred down there. The individual was just under 18. I did not choke him, and the supervisor's statement in both the internal affairs investigation and in the hearing, he had said that it was obvious this individual was not being choked due to him spouting obscenities at both of us through the whole thing. The hearing did go through, and the arbitrator did believe everything that came out on my side.
go ahead.
There was a recent mailing that went out, and I imagine most, if not all of you, may have received that. In that mailing, there is reference to a case that was conflicted out. We received well, the allegation is that I intentionally tried to cover up that rape of a juvenile because it was a family member of a former employee. Therefore, it must have been my friend. This is completely and utterly false. We handled it like we handle any other conflict case. When that initial report came in and we saw that it was a name of a family member, we immediately called another agency and asked them to investigate that report. In a conflict case, you need to remove yourself completely and utterly from that case. We did that. The case was investigated by the other agency. When that investigation was completed, that investigation packet was sent back up to our office, and it was immediately delivered to the county attorney's office. The county attorney's file in that case shows that it arrived 3 days after the final document written by the Anoka County investigator. There were some allegations, why didn't you follow up on that case? It's a conflict case. We cannot influence a conflict case in any way, shape, or form. We hand it off to prosecution. They determine, is there a conflict with their office, and then they move forward on their end. My office did exactly what it should have done, and it will do so again in the future. I think a lot of the changes that we've already made are a step in the right direction. I am a firearms instructor, and I've also spent the last 10 years teaching for one of our local firearms instructors for their carry permit classes. I am a complete supporter of our Second Amendment rights, and I'm a full supporter of a upstanding, qualified citizen that passes the proper testing and background checks to be able to carry if they so choose. The changes that could possibly be made would be able to, it would allow us to maybe close some of the loopholes where criminals are able to get guns or other unauthorized personnel. But that's not going to be an easy task. We are a kind of a gun society, and criminals are able to get guns. They know they can't have them, and they have ways to get them. It isn't any different than the drug trade. They're not supposed to have drugs either, and they get those. But that shouldn't limit the good, solid citizens from being able to possess firearms or carry firearms as long as they can do so in a safe manner. And I think one of the biggest things that we've done to make things better is that we actually require some education now. And we didn't do that prior to about 10 years ago. And through those classes, I think we've done a good job of teaching people the do's and don'ts.
Okay, Ken, any changes in the laws?
No, I'm also a strong advocate for the Second Amendment rights, and any changes would not be made by a single sheriff's office anyway. So I don't see anything to bring up as far as that. That would have to be done through the state legislature.
Okay, thank you, and that